I'm Heidi, the older sister by a few years, working a steady office job in Virginia and always the one fixing family messes. At our family dinner, my golden sister sent me a housewarming registry with a 70-inch TV, a luxury sofa, and $50,000 for renovations. I said, "Dream on," she snapped. "Then you're not invited." So I stayed home, and what happened next had even our parents blaming her. I thought the registry link she texted during dessert was just another one of her over-the-top jokes. We were all at the table in Grandma Julie's old colonial house in Virginia, the one she and her husband had just inherited for free. I was mid-bite, scrolling casually, expecting something cute like kitchen gadgets or a cozy blanket, but when I clicked it, my stomach dropped. This wasn't a simple list. It was a polished spreadsheet divided into essentials, luxuries, and holiday must-haves, with prices that made my head spin: a $6,000 leather sectional, a $1,200 mixer in metallic sheen, a designer lamp pricier than my first car. Smack in the middle, under a cash support tab, bolded and highlighted, suggested donation toward renovation fund $50,000, and the note, "We're counting on you for this one." Nope. I felt a surge of disbelief turn to resolve. This wasn't a wedding or baby shower, it was them moving into a free house, expecting me to fund their dream makeover. I couldn't let it slide. I texted her right there, but she brushed it off like it was normal. When I pushed back, her reply was ice cold. The party went on without me that weekend. I lounged on my couch, ignoring the buzz, until the calls started flooding in. First from our cousin, then Mom. The vibe had soured fast, with her playing the victim. 2 days later, Dad wanted the full story. I braced for the usual defense, but his pause after I spilled everything shifted the air. He knew this wasn't new, and she had no clue the fallout was just beginning. If sibling entitlement stories hit close to home, like and subscribe for more eye-opening tales like this. Later that evening, I sat in my quiet apartment, the weight of the spreadsheet still pressing on my mind. I couldn't shake the audacity of it all, so I picked up the phone and dialed Catherine. She answered with her usual enthusiasm, diving straight into chatter about the perfect shade of gray for the walls, the sleek quartz countertops she'd eyed, and a chandelier that would tie the foyer together perfectly. I let her ramble for a moment, my grip tightening on the glass of wine I'd poured to steady myself, before cutting in to ask if she was serious about the registry. She paused only briefly, then launched into an explanation as if it were the most reasonable request imaginable, reminding me how I'd always stepped up before and how this was just part of supporting their new start. Her tone carried that familiar edge of expectation, like family ties meant automatic access to my wallet. I felt a flash of resentment build as memories surfaced unbidden, the times I'd bailed her out without question, like last November, when Jeffrey got laid off and she begged for $3,000 as an emergency loan, promising repayment that never came, or when she borrowed my credit card for essentials and charged $1,700 at high-end stores and a spa retreat, forcing me to cancel it entirely. I'd even covered her rent twice during her so-called transitional phase, and footed the deposit for her dog's surgery because she framed it as a family crisis. It all tallied up to nearly $10,000. Money I'd written off as sisterly duty until now. I kept my voice steady, telling her outright that I wouldn't contribute a cent. There was no outburst from her, just a flat dismissal before she ended the call abruptly. I stared at the screen, the silence amplifying my growing resolve. This was the line I had to draw. The housewarming party unfolded that Saturday without me. I stayed planted on my couch, flipping through mindless reality shows, letting the evening pass in a haze of detachment. It felt strangely liberating, though a part of me wondered how long the peace would last. By around 7 that evening, my phone began lighting up. The first message came from my cousin Quinn, asking why I'd skipped the gathering. She described how the atmosphere had turned awkward once everyone noticed my absence, with Catherine growing irritable and positioning herself as the one slighted. Soon after, Mom called, her voice laced with concern, mentioning that Catherine had only said I'd bailed without explanation. I didn't dive into details yet, just assured her I'd explain later, sensing the undercurrent of tension rippling through the family. Then came a simple text from Dad. "We need to talk about what happened." I braced myself for the familiar pattern of mediation, where I'd end up smoothing things over once again, but something in his wording hinted this might unfold differently. As the calls tapered off, I replayed the evening's events in my head, piecing together how Catherine's entitlement had woven itself into our lives so seamlessly. The registry wasn't an isolated demand, it was the culmination of years where I'd enabled her patterns without pushback. That $3,000 loan had seemed urgent at the time, Jeffrey's job loss hitting them hard, but her failure to repay spoke volumes. The credit card incident still stung, her charges frivolous while I dealt with the fallout. Covering rent had been a temporary fix during her job hunts, yet it stretched on, and the dog surgery deposit framed as a shared family bond had been another quiet drain. $10,000 in total, vanished into her lifestyle without a trace of gratitude. I wondered if Dad's message signaled he was finally seeing through the facade. The next morning brought clarity. I decided to hold off on responding until I could lay everything out factually, without emotion clouding the truth. Catherine had always thrived on isolation, keeping her borrowings compartmentalized so no one connected the dots. But now, with the party exposing cracks, those dots were starting to align. Quinn's call had revealed more than just party gossip. She'd hinted at her own frustrations, setting the stage for revelations I hadn't anticipated. As I sipped my coffee, I felt the shift, the beginning of accountability that had been overdue for far too long. Dad's insistence on talking pulled me back to the present. I knew the conversation could go either way, but for the first time, I wasn't dreading it. The registry had forced my hand, and in refusing, I'd unlocked a door to honesty that might change everything. As I prepared to call him back, the weight lifted slightly, replaced by a quiet determination to stand firm. The conversation with Dad unfolded the next day over the phone. I laid out the entire registry saga, from the extravagant items to the bold cash demand, attaching the spreadsheet for proof. He listened in his typical measured way, his responses sparse but attentive, prompting me to detail the other instances where Catherine had leaned on me financially. I recounted the pattern without holding back: the emergency funds, the unauthorized charges, the repeated bailouts that had eroded my savings over time. As I wrapped up, he fell silent for a long stretch, then admitted this wasn't the first time her behavior had crossed lines, his voice carrying a newfound weariness. That admission hung in the air, cracking the long-held illusion that Catherine's requests were mere youthful indiscretions. Dad's quiet reflection echoed my own growing awareness, as if the family's blind spots were finally sharpening into focus. He murmured something about how we should have caught on earlier, the words underscoring a collective oversight that had enabled her for years. It felt like a turning point, the spell of unquestioned support beginning to fracture under the weight of accumulated truths. Mom reached out shortly after, her call prompted by Dad sharing the details. I forwarded the spreadsheet again, and within minutes, her text arrived: just, "Wow," followed by a string of stunned emojis. For once, she didn't rush to Catherine's defense, her usual instinct to mediate absent. Instead, she probed gently for more context, her tone shifting from confusion to quiet dismay as the scope sank in. This lack of immediate protection for Catherine marked a subtle but profound change, one that validated the frustration I'd harbored silently. Quinn followed up that afternoon, her message laced with anger. She confessed to lending Catherine $250 just weeks earlier, claiming it was for a potential furnace repair in the colonial house. Quinn had handed it over without question. But now, armed with the registry details I'd shared, she seethed at the deception. She revealed another loan from June, a few $100 to tide them over, repayment promises fading into excuses. Her fury mirrored my own, amplifying the sense that Catherine's web of dependencies was unraveling thread by thread. I responded to inquiries from them with straightforward facts, avoiding any dramatic outbursts or accusations. When Mom asked for clarification on specific entries, I explained the categories and costs plainly. Dad wanted verification on the cash tab, so I confirmed the highlighted amount. Quinn pressed for advice on reclaiming her money, and I suggested documenting everything methodically. This approach kept emotions in check, letting the evidence speak for itself. No need for rants when the numbers painted the picture so clearly. As the day wore on, the conversations wove a tapestry of shared disillusionment. Dad's recognition of the pattern extended beyond my loans. He recalled vague hints from past family talks that now clicked into place. Mom's wow evolved into questions about Catherine's overall handling of the inheritance, her concern deepening as she connected it to broader irresponsibility. Quinn's involvement added layers, her furnace story highlighting how Catherine preyed on isolated vulnerabilities, always framing needs as isolated crises. This emerging unity felt empowering yet bittersweet. Years of being the reliable one had conditioned me to absorb these burdens. But now, with Dad's mutter and Mom's restraint, the dynamic tilted. Quinn's solidarity bridged the gap, her outsider perspective within the family accelerating the momentum. I navigated the exchanges carefully, balancing honesty with restraint, ensuring each fact landed without exaggeration. By evening, the initial shock had settled into resolve. Dad suggested we all compare notes more thoroughly, a practical step toward addressing the root issues. Mom agreed, her follow-up text indicating she'd hold off on direct confrontation until we aligned. Quinn vowed to stop enabling, her determination infectious, in sharing these truths. I wasn't just venting, I was dismantling the narrative Catherine had crafted, one honest disclosure at a time. The process stirred a mix of relief and apprehension, relief that the isolation ended, apprehension about Catherine's reaction once cornered. Yet, the family's subtle pivot, Dad's insight, Mom's validation, Quinn's solidarity fortified me. No longer the sole bearer, I sensed the collective will to enforce boundaries forming. Ever felt that shift in family dynamics? The following day, the revelations accelerated as Quinn reached out with more details she'd gathered from mutual acquaintances. She forwarded screenshots from a neighbor who had painted the garage as a favor without reimbursement and a friend who had received pleas for bill assistance. All under the guise of temporary hardship, these fragments painted a clearer picture of Catherine's ongoing schemes. Borrowing piecemeal to avoid scrutiny, Quinn's messages fueled the momentum, urging family members to exchange stories that had remained siloed for too long. As notes were compared, the extent of the deception emerged, small sums here and there that added up to a pattern of reliance on others' generosity. I felt a mix of validation and sorrow, realizing how deeply this had infiltrated our relationships. Catherine's ability to juggle these requests while enjoying the perks of a rent-free colonial house struck me as particularly galling. She indulged in extravagances like $90 scented candles and bespoke curtains, all while portraying herself as struggling to make ends meet. The contrast fueled my determination to step back entirely. Our parents decided to confront her directly, arranging a meeting I chose not to attend. From what Mom later shared, Catherine initially dissolved into tears, attributing her actions to overwhelming stress from the move and Jeffrey's job instability. She shifted blame outward, avoiding any admission of fault. Mom remained firm, declaring there would be no further financial support. Dad echoed the sentiment, suggesting that if basic management of the house proved too challenging, perhaps ownership wasn't suited for her yet. Their united front marked a turning point I hadn't fully anticipated. Motivated by this shift, I revisited a gift I'd given 6 months earlier, a top-of-the-line washer and dryer set, complete with installation, totaling $2,200 after taxes. At the time, it had felt like a practical contribution to her new home, but now it symbolized my overextended kindness. I located the invoice in my emails and contacted the store, learning their policy permitted retrieval for store credit within the warranty period. I arranged the pickup for 3 days later, arriving with the movers at a time when Catherine's car was absent but Jeffrey's remained. He answered the door with a blank expression, stepping aside without protest as I explained the appliances were still under my name. The team efficiently disconnected the units, coiled the cords, and wheeled them out. Jeffrey observed from the stairs, his silence heavy with unspoken thoughts. As I signed the paperwork outside, he lingered in the doorway and murmured his confusion about the person he'd married. His words lingered in my mind, hinting at fractures beyond what I'd seen. Reflecting on the day's events, I recognized how this act reclaimed not just the items but a sense of agency I'd surrendered over years. The family's awakening continued to unfold, with Quinn's role proving pivotal in connecting the disparate experiences. Her fury at her own unrepaid loan mirrored my own, strengthening the collective resolve. As evening fell, I contemplated the broader implications. Catherine's habits had thrived in secrecy, but transparency was dismantling them piece by piece. The parents' intervention had set boundaries that felt long overdue, and my retrieval of the gift reinforced them. The process wasn't driven by vengeance, but by necessity, a recalibration of what family support truly meant. With each step, the illusion of her perpetual need dissolved, revealing the self-sufficiency she could achieve if forced to. In the quiet aftermath, I sensed the dynamics shifting irreversibly, paving the way for healthier interactions ahead. By the end of that week, Jeffrey's departure came swiftly after he stumbled upon the equity loan documents hidden in a drawer. The paperwork revealed a $50,000 withdrawal against the house, taken without his knowledge, and confirmed his name had never been added to the deed despite her assurances. He packed a duffel bag with essentials and his gaming console, leaving without confrontation to stay with a friend nearby. In a brief exchange with Quinn, he expressed his growing doubts, noting that my decision to reclaim the gift indicated deeper issues at play. Catherine's messages flooded in soon after, accusing me of deliberate humiliation and exacerbating the rift in her marriage. Her words carried a sting of betrayal, as if my actions alone had unraveled their life together. She turned to Mom next, insisting the appliances had been stolen from her home. Mom countered by questioning whether any payment had been made for them, exposing the flaw in her narrative when the response sidestepped the truth. Quinn demanded repayment for her own loan, her patience exhausted by the emerging pattern. Mom and Dad solidified their stance, affirming no additional funds would flow her way, a boundary drawn with finality. Catherine's frustration boiled over in subsequent communications, claiming the family had always favored me, the reliable one, over her needs. The accusation rang hollow. Given the years I'd shouldered the burdens she created, I chose to ignore her voicemails, which escalated from angry rants to tearful pleas, even drawing parallels between my resolve and Mom's past firmness. Each unanswered call reinforced my commitment to detachment. The emotional toll lingered, but a sense of liberation emerged as the family's support coalesced around accountability rather than indulgence. Jeffrey's exit symbolized the breaking point, his discovery peeling back layers of mistrust. Reflecting on the sequence, I saw how the loan's secrecy had been the linchpin, its revelation dismantling the facade she'd maintained. The house, once a symbol of inheritance, now stood as a testament to mismanagement. Quinn's involvement had amplified the fallout, her shared experiences validating the collective awakening. The decision to cut off aid felt like a necessary reset, protecting everyone from further entanglement. As days passed, the silence from Catherine grew, interspersed with sporadic attempts to elicit sympathy. I remained steadfast, recognizing that true change required facing consequences without rescue. The equity loan's implications loomed large, a financial anchor that could pull her under if unaddressed. Jeffrey's absence left a void, his quiet withdrawal speaking volumes about the eroded trust. In moments of quiet, I pondered the cost of my previous generosity, how it had enabled rather than helped. The family's united front provided a buffer, allowing space for reflection without guilt. Catherine's lashing out highlighted her resistance to scrutiny, but the tide had turned irrevocably. The accusations of favoritism faded against the backdrop of facts now laid bare. Ignoring the voicemails became easier with time, each one a reminder of patterns I no longer wished to perpetuate. The comparison to Mom struck a chord, underscoring generational echoes I aimed to break. The week's events crystallized the need for boundaries, transforming passive support into active preservation of self. Jeffrey's friend offered him temporary refuge, a step toward independence he hadn't anticipated. Quinn's repayment demand echoed the broader call for equity, her fury a catalyst for change. Mom and Dad's confirmation sealed the shift, their words an anchor in the storm. As the dust settled, I felt the weight lift, replaced by a cautious optimism for healthier dynamics ahead. A week later, I moved forward with reclaiming the last outstanding debt from the previous year, the $1,800 I'd wired for her car repair after a timing belt failure. She'd promised repayment within 60 days, but later dismissed it as a gift when pressed. I assembled the evidence meticulously, the bank transfer record, our text exchanges confirming the loan terms, and the mechanic's invoice detailing the work. With the folder in hand, I filed the small claims suit at the local courthouse. A straightforward process that required no fanfare. The papers were served on a Tuesday, marking the official step into accountability. Catherine's reaction arrived swiftly through voicemails that swung from furious outbursts to sobs, labeling me as devoid of compassion in her distress. Quinn shared a more significant development during our next conversation. Jeffrey had believed his name was on the house deed post-marriage, but discovery proved otherwise, compounded by the secret equity loan she'd secured. Jeffrey's confrontation unfolded over the phone, ending abruptly with his disconnection and subsequent filing for separation, a decision born from eroded confidence in their partnership. Catherine's downward trajectory accelerated as she turned to social media, sharing veiled quotes about familial disloyalty that vanished shortly after posting when engagement remained absent. Her attempts at garnering sympathy through lyrics and scriptural references fell flat. She then launched a GoFundMe campaign seeking $35,000, citing unforeseen housing expenses and desertion by kin. I forwarded the link to our parents, eliciting Dad's terse response of disbelief at the audacity. The campaign's failure stemmed from the family's awareness, with no contributions materializing amid the exposed truths. My inner resolve strengthened, viewing these steps as desperate grasps at avoidance. The voicemails persisted briefly, their emotional volatility underscoring her unwillingness to reflect inwardly. Ignoring them brought a measure of peace, distancing me from the cycle of manipulation. Quinn's update on Jeffrey highlighted the loan's role as the catalyst, its secrecy shattering illusions of shared futures. The separation filing formalized what had become inevitable. Catherine's post revealed a pattern of externalizing blame, but the lack of response forced a confrontation with reality she couldn't evade. The GoFundMe's quick demise mirrored the crumbling support network. Dad's reaction to the campaign reinforced the family's stance, his succinct assessment capturing the collective exhaustion with her tactics. Mom's silence on the matter spoke equally loud. As I processed these events, a sense of closure began to form, the suit representing not just financial recovery, but a boundary against future encroachments. The car's repair loan had seemed minor at the time, a quick fix during her panic, yet its unresolved status symbolized broader issues. The small claims process unfolded predictably, with service confirming the claim's legitimacy. Catherine's heartless label stung momentarily, but faded against the backdrop of accumulated grievances. Jeffrey's hang-up marked his exit from the deception, the deed omission a betrayal too profound to overlook. Quinn's relay of this detail deepened my understanding of the marriage's fragility. The Facebook deletions indicated her awareness of the post's futility, a small admission amid the chaos. The GoFundMe's claims of abandonment rang ironic, given the self-inflicted isolation. Parents' receipt of the link prompted no action beyond observation, their prior commitments holding firm. Dad's unreal encapsulated the absurdity, a quiet validation of the path forward. In retrospect, the week's developments affirmed the necessity of my actions, transforming passive endurance into proactive separation from toxicity. The next morning, a call from Grandma Julie's lawyer brought an unexpected layer to the unfolding situation. He outlined an overlooked clause in her will should the primary heir demonstrate financial irresponsibility, such as defaulting on significant loans. The property could revert to the alternate beneficiary, me. The revelation left me momentarily speechless, the clause's activation hinging on potential bank foreclosure or legal pursuit if payments lapsed. It reframed the house as a conditional asset rather than an absolute gift. Quinn's reaction came via text, her enthusiasm palpable even in writing as she processed the news. Meanwhile, Catherine's online presence grew erratic, cryptic updates hinting at unspoken grievances that garnered no engagement from our circle. Mom attempted one final conversation, emphasizing the importance of owning her choices, but Catherine disconnected midway, unwilling to engage constructively. I found myself reflecting on the cumulative toll of my contributions, nearly $10,000 dispersed through various favors, each one chipping away at my own stability. Grandma Julie's wisdom echoed in my thoughts. Kindness carries a cost in time, energy, and inner tranquility. The final unraveling solidified with complete severance. Family communications ceased. Jeffrey proceeded with formal separation proceedings, and Catherine faced the looming threat of foreclosure amid her mounting debts. No lingering ties remained, a clean break from the entanglement. This culmination underscored real-world repercussions of unchecked debt and relational betrayal, where misplaced trust leads to isolation and financial peril in everyday American life. The boundaries drawn prevented further manipulation, highlighting the value of financial responsibility and the necessity of limits in familial bonds to preserve personal peace. Catherine's text arrived a week later, a half-hearted expression of regret lacking genuine remorse, which I left unanswered, solidifying my detachment. The clause loomed as a safeguard, its potential enforcement a testament to Grandma Julie's foresight. Quinn's excitement contrasted sharply with Catherine's isolation, her posts fading into irrelevance without the support she once took for granted. Mom's urge for accountability fell on deaf ears, the hang-up symbolizing the end of mediated interventions. My reflections deepened, tallying not just the monetary loss but the emotional investment squandered. Grandma Julie's words served as a guiding principle, reminding me that unchecked generosity often exacts a hidden price. The fallout's reality manifested in tangible ways: separation papers processed through legal channels, aid withdrawn, leaving vulnerabilities exposed, and the house at risk of loss through standard banking procedures. These outcomes illustrated the harsh lessons of fiscal mismanagement within close-knit ties. In sharing this, the core value emerges: kindness, while noble, demands discernment to avoid enabling harmful patterns. Establishing boundaries protects against exploitation, fostering healthier dynamics in the long run. The American context amplifies these truths, where debt cycles can fracture families, underscoring the imperative of personal accountability to mitigate such divides. What would you do in my shoes? Comment your thoughts and like if it resonated.